right, here we go. OverDrive, off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 4. Bryan Hayes, Jamie Noodles, McLennan, and there's Dave Feschuk of the Toronto Star.
What's going on today,
How are we feeling today? How's everyone doing today?
Not bad.
Not bad? Everyone's okay? Everyone's feeling all right?
I don't know. I'm fired up, guys. I mean, I think we've got... You know, the NHL is going to spend some money. Or, I mean, not the NHL, but they've opened up the doors for teams to spend some money. Hayes, I can see the smile on your face.
Yeah, this is interesting. I don't recall anything ever happening like this in 20 years of salary cap, you know, the salary cap world we lived in, where the NHL or any other league makes a projection on what the cap's going to look like 3 years out.
Yeah.
But the insiders were reporting that last night. I saw Darren Dreger say that they were hoping to hold off until the Four Nations face-off. I guess everyone got wind of it, so they said, screw it, man, we're just going to send it out now. And the NHL and the PA, again, are forecasting significant salary cap bumps. It's currently $88 million. That's what the salary cap is this year. That's the ceiling of the cap. Next year, it will be $95.5 million. After the year after that, 104. The year after that, 113.5 million.
Wow.
So in other words, it's going up 25 million in 3 years.
That's
so
impressive.
It's a lot of money. I mean, obviously, it says that the league, they survived COVID. Remember, everything was, we don't know if we can keep going, and we're in big trouble here. Remember Gary laying it on thick?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't know if we can play. I don't know if we're going to survive this. Now, all of a sudden, the cap has skyrocketed. And they have been forecasting this for a while, that it would bump up. Just we didn't necessarily have exact numbers. And these could fluctuate a little bit. But tell me if I'm wrong. I don't remember knowing the cap or having an idea of what it could be 3 years from now.
Yeah.
I don't remember them ever saying, hey, here's a 3-year run. And what is the benefit of doing that? I'm not sure. Obviously, the PA wants it. Maybe the GMs want it. I'm always a little curious. Like, what's the league getting out of this?
Well, that's what I always wonder, right? And I think what the league... If you have a kind of skeptical eye at this, you might be saying to yourself, wait a second here. You know, the league's in process of negotiating a new CBA with the players.
Yeah.
So good news. And, hey, guys, look how great our league's doing right now. That's maybe a good thing to throw out there when you're negotiating with a party, right? To make them feel good. They're feeling good about their lives. Maybe take out some of the – if there are people in that – you know, there's always hawks in the players' union that want more and want to go harder at the commissioner and want to negotiate harder. This may soften those hawks a little bit or make it tougher for the Hawks to make the argument that they need to go harder at the league.
Yeah, I agree. Because all he has to do is point to it and go, look at how well we're doing. And it's just magical all of a sudden that the escrow is off the table now and guys are going to get a little rebate check. Like it's to me, you're heading into the age of, okay, like the league has done well. You guys, we've been talking about this forever. I played in the late 90s and Chris Pronger was making $10 million a year. The top paid player this year is who? Matthews at what? 13.5?
13.25.
Yeah. That's what, 25 years later, where basketball's at 60 million guys are making a year or whatever. And I go different sports, different TV contracts. I understand that. But you would think that the league would have kind of progressively grown, and it really hasn't from the top down. And you know, to me, I think this is a good sign. Now, I will say with the Canadian dollar and what's going on, like it could get ugly. Like, you know, if a team's spending $113 million, that's $170 or whatever it is.
Canadian. Yeah, it's a lot of money, man. The exchange rate is brutal right now, and I am curious about that as well. Like, there's going to be the haves and the have-nots, but with a ceiling comes a floor as well. So if it gets to $113.5 million, there are percentages that are steeped into the CBA where you have to meet that. I don't know exactly what that number is or what that projects to. But it may very well lead to, you know, some teams saying we're going to floor it. We know what teams that those are likely to be.
Yep.
And some teams that are going to just straddle the bottom. And I guess we're going to have to sort that out as we move forward here. And I'm sure Canadian teams and smaller Canadian markets are nervous about that. But if you're a bigger Canadian market like the Leafs, it should be irrelevant. I mean, it better be irrelevant.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you can't start claiming, wow, wait a minute, Max Scherzer, you just gave $15.5 million. Right? You can't come back and say, well, we don't want to get quite to that level when it comes to the Maple Leafs. So it's a lot of money that's going to be available, a lot of flexibility. What I can guarantee you is there will be stupid contracts and managers will screw this up.
Oh, yeah.
That is never going to stop. It doesn't matter if the cap is $10 million or $113 million. There will be managers that screw it up, hand out dumb contracts, and then get handcuffed and say, we just don't have room.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, well, here's your opportunity, right? It's you can weaponize this. And I know in Toronto, everyone's looking towards Marner and Tavares, and I understand that. I don't look at this as, oh, now you just give them what they want because you have the freedom to do it. I look at it the complete opposite way. I said, look at how much room you have to weaponize here. Like, if do not change your stance one iota if you're the Maple Leafs, because if it's with Marner, if it's with Tavares, or if it's not, you're going to have tens of millions of dollars to spend. And to really flex your muscles over the next 3 or 4 years, where you can completely reshape the way you do business and reshape the whole roster based on this level of flexibility. It should be it's an incredible opportunity. The question is, will they seize it? Will the Leafs seize it, and will the other teams that have the money and that are willing to spend to the ceiling, will they seize it? We don't have that answer right now.
Yeah.
But it's a great opportunity to really flex your muscles and again, weaponize cap space.
Yeah, but the cap space goes fast, right? Like, that looks like, man, they could spend $30 million. Well, if Marner gets exactly what he got the last time he signed, which is 13.4% of the salary cap, that's a $12.7 million cap hit, going forward. If he gets a little raise, which I think he might want.
I think he's going to demand.
Judging by past behavior and past negotiations, even if he goes to 14% of the cap, which would put him under Matthews' current deal, which was like 15% of the cap, that's $13.5 million. That's almost half your cap space gobbled up by one guy. Right there.
Exactly.
Snap of the fingers.
Exactly.
Stroke of the pen.
Yeah. That's where you need value contracts. And I look at teams that have depth that go, okay, I'm all right paying my third line left winger $4.25 million because the top of my roster makes $9.5, 10, you name it. You still, to your point, Brian, you can't be crazy. You can't be a drunken sailor just because you think you got a few extra dollars. I did think, though, with the cap bumping up next year, will that allow managers to be a little bit more aggressive at the deadline here? Maybe what I mean by this, if you trade for somebody who has term left, that, now it's not just grabbing an unrestricted free agent guy because, that's an expiring contract we can deal with this summer. If you covet somebody and he's got another year or two on his deal, you can work that into your plan moving forward and the cap moving up. So I think, if anything, this projected cap, you're like, okay, I am going to have a little bit of extra money to play with in the interim right now if I want to sign a guy, trade for a guy who has a few years left on his deal that is cost certainty. So I kind of thought about that. I'm just thinking, you get crazy if it's the Kadris or it's Jacob Trouba's got another year on his deal. Guys like that who, I don't know what Calgary's doing. That's a massive trade last night. We'll get into that.
Yeah,
that's your guy, Brian.
I love Morgan Frost. Always been a Morgan Frost guy. Shout out to Andy Frost, the whole Frost crew.
Exactly.
And speaking of those two, they fought last. I love Nazem Kadri so much. Trouba buried him twice. Buried him. And the second time he said, screw it, we're going.
Yeah, that's it. I had enough. I'm getting up and going right at you.
I would do anything to have Nazem Kadri back in Toronto. Throw all caution to the wind. I would approach it like I do the Scherzer deal. It's just great to have him in town.
Yeah.
Just have him here. He's a big personality. He's a great guy. I want to see Nas back in Toronto.
And nobody wants to be here more than Nas.
That's right.
Never wanted to leave.
Exactly. He did everything he could to stop the trade, right? He said, I'm not going here, I'm not going there. Originally, he wasn't going to Calgary. He had no dice.
Yeah. Here's the thing. They love him there, and they're making moves
they're
around.
They're playing well right now.
And they're playing well, and they're battling for a playoff spot. I don't think, if anything, I love the move for Calgary on a couple different fronts. Craig Conroy got younger and more skilled. And Pelche is a nice player. Kuzmenko, he's a wild card, and he's older. He's not like he's 22. I believe he's 28.
He's 29, I think. 29. Now, yeah.
So I mean, to me, you get Farabee and you get Frost, and you kind of have them fall into that retool in the middle of that group there. They're not 31, but they're not 21. They're in the mid-20s. Like, to me, I really like the deal.
Yeah, I think it's a smart play because, Farabee had a fair amount of points. He had 50 points last year.
Yeah.
He plays with some bite. And Morgan Frost is a guy who's really smart and really talented. And he just didn't mix with Tortorella. Tortorella just is not a mix, and he's not alone. There's a line up, get in the back of the line, because and Kuzmenko's got something coming his way when he rolls into town, and Torts is waiting for him.
Well, even Torts had the Russian in the
Mitchkov last night. Yeah, he's losing his mind on Mitchkov. He's barely playing him.
That was a lazy. I will say that was a lazy play that cost them the goal against. But
absolutely,
and then they pulled. Didn't Frost get pulled halfway through the game? I think everyone who got traded got pulled. Didn't they?
That's what this is what always fascinates me. We're talking about a salary cap that's going to be $113.5 million. This is a league that generates billions and billions of dollars. You have all day to work out a trade. We'll figure it out after puck drop. You really couldn't have crossed the T's and dotted the I's before the game. That happens every once in a while. Our buddy Mike Camilleri, remember Cammy famously got traded halfway through a game. I think he was in Calgary maybe. He was either Montreal or Calgary. He was one or the other. And second period, they're like, Cammy, you got to go, man. You just got dealt. We asked him that. I remember interviewing him on that, and he's like, it was the most surreal moment of my career.
Yeah, that's right.
You're out there grinding and playing and giving it your all, and then all of a sudden you get pulled out of the game halfway through and told you're traded. I would guess Morgan Frost was doing cartwheels down the
high stepping.
See it, Torts, right? He probably gave it the old, you're cool. You know what? You're cool. I'm out.
Yeah, Mitchkov might have been saying, can I go with you guys?
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Listen, the program there, they're on point. And you know what? We had Danny Briere on a couple weeks ago, and Briere said they're all on the same page. And internally, there are guys, you're right, there are guys who are going to struggle with the way that Torts coaches, but there's other guys that are I have no problem with it. So to me, it's how it affects you individually. You guys know I played for Joel Quenneville, who was demanding but very fair. I played for Daryl Sutter. I played for Mike Keenan. I loved them because I knew exactly where I stood. Now, you didn't love every day. Sometimes there was a struggle. But, at the end of the day, I think and it's all right for trades to work out for both sides.
Yeah.
I witnessed it last night. Jacob Chychrun plays for the Washington Capitals, and Nick Jensen plays for the Ottawa Senators. That's a trade. I talked to both sides. They're like, we're really happy with our player. And it's all right to have a trade where it works out for both sides.
Yeah. Well, and what Philly's doing here is they're looking for cap space, and they're committing to what they launched a year or two ago.
Yep.
They're not that good. They know they're not that good. What I find interesting is Calgary is kind of straddling the line, but you understand why, because they've exceeded so many expectations this year. And they played well. And again, these are young players. They haven't acquired guys in their 30s here. Yeah. These are guys who are still in their mid-20s, still finding their way into the league that can help them today and into the future. So I think it makes sense on both sides. But I think what Philly's doing is getting out from underneath contracts and bringing in picks, and they want flexibility. And again, this gets back to how we started the show. With the cap going up so much, Philly's always been a spender, like historically in the Ed Snyder days. And I don't know exactly where they are today in terms of ownership. But you have the potential to, again, really weaponize salary cap room in the next 2 or 3 years, where if you can bring in young kids, bring them up, maybe get ahead of it and sign them before they really pop, then you get them under contract at a lower number. That opens the door to really do some damage. And I think that's the way Philly's playing it. And I don't think they should be alone. You look at Montreal now, they've lost 4 in a row, right? And everyone's starting to turn on Line A. I noticed that. Patrick, the last 3 games, just kind of floating around, not doing much. I've noticed Habs fans are like, what's going on with this guy?
Oh, you haven't seen him play?
What's happening with Patrick Line A? And
it is, you know what? I believe Montreal, the highs and the lows, I've said this, I'm going to be consistent. I didn't think they were a playoff team, but I think they've played meaningful minutes and will down the stretch. The Goulet injury is going to hurt them.
Really
he's played really well.
Crushing them, man.
But at the end of the day, Montreal went on that run. And what happens, expectations, I hope internally the expectations didn't change. Like, hey, we're on a pathway. We like some of our young players. This Hudson kid's going to be a really great player. We got the Demidov kid coming from Russia. Like, they've got a plan there. It sounds like they got a young goaltender that they're given an opportunity. They got their starter. Like, I think their framework is in good shape. But what's happened is everyone's got all excited in Montreal because and rightfully so. You go 13-2 or whatever it was.
They had a great run, and they're still kind of in it. But you lose 4 in a row, you're in trouble. And again, what happened? It's like, what do you do with Jake Evans? What do you do now with David Savard? And this is what we talked about a few weeks ago. And again, with these numbers coming out, with these projections, if I'm Montreal, if Molson's willing to spend, which I think he will be, but. Like, Montreal's in a weird place because, again, the Canadian dollar and all that, they've had struggles in the past. They're incredibly valuable. They're going to sell. They're going to make some money. But if you're in a position where you're willing to spend to that, if I'm Montreal, I'm still loading up thinking like 2 years down the road where you've got guys under contract like Caulfield, like Suzuki, like Slavkovsky. You've got Hudson under control. You've got kids coming like you just mentioned. You got your goaltenders who you think you've figured out. You can really get in on some big money. Like if you look at a guy like Mikko Rantanen, he's probably looking at this thinking, okay, like that's why now that I'm out of Colorado, I'm looking at $14 million a year or $15 million a year. Maybe Marner does the same thing, and I'm not linking them to Montreal necessarily, but those are the kind of teams that may look at it and think we got the money to spend here.
Oh, yeah. And, hey, it couldn't have been a better morning, guys, for the agents of Mikko Rantanen and Mitch Marner.
Yeah,
to wake up and see, wait a second. Cap's going up that much?
Are you guys ever going to be – can you picture a scenario where the Leafs and Leaf fans are comfortable with Mitch Marner making more money than Auston Matthews?
Well, look, it might just be the simple math. This is about percentages of the cap rising. And if you just – like I just laid it out, that 14% number, which would only be a 0.6% raise that he'd be getting in terms of his percentage of the cap, that would take him over Matthews under this $95.5 million projection, right? So he doesn't have to make a lot more money relative to what he was making against the cap to go above Matthews because he's signing with the cap rising.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find it tough, and I get it, but I think you got a scenario where this isn't Draisaitl McDavid. You know what I mean? Like, like Mitch Marner has never ever been. Arguably the best player on the planet or close to it or won a heart. Like, Draisaitl's different. So Draisaitl did leap McDavid, but McDavid, what I thought about seeing 113, I'm like, how much is McDavid going to chew up? Like, could he get to 20?
He might get $20 million.
Yeah.
He might get $20 million.
That because he's coming up at the right time too.
Right.
So I think a lot of these players that are available, we can throw Sam Bennett into the mix. That guy's going to be a very coveted unrestricted free agent. Rantanen, Marner, all the players that are coming up. Yes, you're licking your chops, but are you, again, coming back to Brian's original comment, are these managers going to be stupid and just blow their brains out here? There might be somebody that gets crazy, but also you still have to I think it's a great reset for a team that's too top heavy.
Yeah.
Like, that's the way I look at it.
My answer is I think this stuff is irrelevant personally if I'm the Leafs. Like I might be willing to go to $13.25 million, which is what Matthews' deal is. He didn't sign that 5 years ago either. Like, this is the first year of his new deal. Like, I don't care what the numbers project to be. I'm not paying anyone a penny more than Auston Matthews. And I think it would be malpractice to do that. And I'm not saying Marner shouldn't ask for it, or even Marner could make the case for why he should get it based on the percentages and everything that you're saying, Dave. But let's also not be naive here. Everyone knew that it was going. This wasn't just today. The league and the agents said, "Oh, wow, I didn't realize it was going." Everyone knew it was coming. Everyone knew it was going up. That's why Matthews only signed for 4 years. Yeah. Also, because he wants to re-up and start making more money. I'm sure a few years from now, and he very well could, and he probably will. Yeah. But I'm taking my P's and Q's from what Colorado just did. And you referenced Draisaitl and McDavid. I would apply the same logic to Makar and McKinnon. Makar, I'm willing to adjust my numbers for.
You're going to have to. You won't have a
You have to. You have to. And you're going to.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it for Mitch. I wouldn't do it for Mikko Rantanen either. I have an appreciation for what Colorado did.
I got news for you. If you're not doing it for Mitch, you're probably not going to sign him because this is the math the agents use, Brian.
I understand that. On an 8-year deal, you're right.
These guys are hardliners. I mean, like.
Of course they are. But the Leafs are allowed to be too. That's my point, Dave. I'm not disputing that Mitch or anyone else has all the right in the world to negotiate in good faith. I'm not saying you're being greedy or stupid or anything. Everything you're laying out is factual. The team is responsible for team building.
I agree.
It's the manager's responsibility to put forth a team philosophy and stick to it. Colorado said, we're not doing it. That management has won a Stanley Cup. That management has built a Stanley Cup.
100%.
That management is looking at it and saying, we're going to weaponize now the flexibility that we have. We're going to pay McKinnon. We're going to pay McCarr, and we're going to work this out. It may or may
steps.
It may work. It may not.
Yeah, you're right.
It may work. It may not.
Yeah.
But for me, at some point, you got to draw a line. And if it's going to go to 14 or 15, yes, the cap's going up. It's still going to be way too much money to the same guys.
Right.
And again, as I've said consistently throughout the year, I'm not doing anything until after the playoffs anyway.
Right.
I'm not doing unless, and even I wouldn't do this, but I could see the Leafs doing this. Okay, if you want to sign now, but it's got to be under Matthews. Mm-hmm. Like if you want to sign right now for $13 million on an 8-year deal, maybe they'd be willing to do that. But I'm waiting to see how the playoffs play out, and I think fair. That's mandatory the way things have gone so far.
And I think Mitch has given himself an opportunity to do what he wants to do.
Yeah, he's a free agent. Absolutely,
he's a free agent. So why wouldn't you see how this all shakes out, and then you can figure it out on the back end? Unfortunately, this is where the biggest challenge is. We'll bring it home to Toronto. If he walks, what you're getting is cap space. You're not getting an asset back like Colorado did. Colorado got cap space back because Neshkash makes less, and they got a player. Like they got a little bit of both. Where if Marner walks, they get cap space. They don't get Mitch Marner. Now you're chasing to find the replacement for Mitch Marner or change the dynamic of what your team looks like. So that's Hayes, you said the other day, glass half full, glass half empty. This is what we're going to be dealing with if Mitch Marner goes to free agency. If, where do you replace him? And you'll be looking for the new Mitch Marner or somebody or a different dynamic of play.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, it won't be easy. I'm not saying that it's going to be easy, but let's, again, it's easier to talk about this in terms of a pro-Marner, pro-core four in January when they're playing regular season games.
Right.
That's another element of it, right? Like if you go to if you get to the playoffs and they get knocked out again, that'll be 9 years of Matthews, Marner, and Nylander with one playoff win. How could you possibly justify continuing the philosophy?
You could justify it, guys. You look at the TSN top 25 midseason player rankings.
Yes.
There's Mitch Marner, the highest ranked Leaf.
Been outstanding.
Number 9.
He's been really good.
Matthews way down at 23.
Wasn't 9 on my list.
Matthews at 23. Noodles, where was Matthews on your list?
He was top 10 for me. I'm sorry.
That is asinine to me. That is crazy.
So you accused me the other day of not understanding the assignment. I just had a tough time. So let me clarify, Dave, when we went into this and we had a huge argument about it the other day. I have a tough time regardless of, you're right, Auston Matthews' injury, not at the top of his game, going, that player is better than that one. I just have a tough time doing it because I've seen the body of work. I know what they're capable of. And it's not like Matthews has 2 goals. He's got 20 in under 40 games. Like, it's still, I just have a tough time going, Travis Konecny is better than Auston Matthews in my head. And I know and I understand. I kind of booted the assignment. And Hayes was just proud as punch to not have McDavid at 1. I had McDavid at 1.
And he wasn't number 1.
He wasn't at 1.
He's not number 1.
Not 2 either.
I would argue, though, and this has the Quizmaster's fingerprints all over it. He manipulates the numbers.
No, I don't think so.
100%
I don't believe that.
And I know Kaz does, and all of these guys, they change it around, and all of a sudden it doesn't look. I think we should do a transparent ballot from them because I would love to see, because I swear they change the numbers. Like, they'd move it around, like, all of a sudden, because I'll get an email back going, it's funny you didn't have that guy on your list. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't have him on their list. Well, it's on their list. And so they bully that guy into the list somehow.
Well, I disagree with that
some
vehemently.
backdoor deals going on.
I don't see it that way whatsoever.
I'm having fun. You guys know that.
I
but
know that.
At the end of the day, you know what, Dave? I probably booted the assignment.
Well, again, to clarify what it is, it's based on the play of everyone up to this point this season.
Right.
Correct.
That was what it was. It's not projecting who's the best player the rest of the way or
Yeah.
actually ranking best players.
Who would you rather
Obviously,
have?
McDavid
Yeah.
would be number one there.
Yeah,
It's
you're right.
who has had the best year. And listen, I can reason with Matthews. Where was he? 23?
23.
I can reason with that. That's not outrageous. I'm not yelling and screaming about that. I didn't personally have him top 25. That doesn't mean I'd have him 80th or something like that. He just hasn't played enough. And when he has played, I don't think he's been at the top of his game up until recently.
Right.
But, Draisaitl 1, McKinnon 2, McDavid 3, Hellebuck 4, Kucherov 5. That's your top 5. Yeah, I got you. I had it slightly different, but not significantly different. And they're all great players having great years.
Here's my list. I'll give you the top 7 that I had. McDavid, Draisaitl, McKinnon, Hellebuck, Kucherov, Makar, Hughes. Like that. I mean, those are
that's
pretty, and they're all having great seasons. Correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
I don't think I booted it that bad, but I just had a tough time, and I rationalizing it's not right or wrong, but I had a tough time not having McDavid at 1, and I understand Draisaitl at 1 deserves it. I mean, if they're handing the heart out today, he probably gets it, right?
Yeah.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I think he's had a great year. Hellebuck would be right there. Quinn Hughes could be in the running.
Yeah,
McKinnon's in the running. There's a bunch of guys who are having great years. But all right, the Leafs are in Edmonton tomorrow, or they're there practicing right now. They're playing the Oilers tomorrow night. Tavares is back. Nyes is back. It looks like Stolarz is back. So I think they're all going to be in the lineup and playing tomorrow night. Doesn't mean Stolarz will start. But we'll get into that. Stan Bowman coming up, the GM of the Oilers. We'll catch up with him on this salary cap news that has been handed out by the league today, what it means for his team moving towards the trade deadline. We'll tee up the game tomorrow. And Mike Johnson coming up as well. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, Overdrive continues, powered by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Leafs are in Edmonton practicing right now. Looks like Tavares will return. Nyes will return. Stolarz will return. You know what I'm fascinated by?
What's that?
Yanni Hakanpää is in Toronto skating. Alex Pietrangelo has pulled out of the Four Nations face-off before Yanni Hakanpää. Like, this guy's still on the Finnish roster, and he hasn't played. And he's not even traveling with the team. Like, when is he going to pull the shoot on the Four Nations face-off, or is he just going to bomb out there and play 25 minutes?
Well, is he going to replace Heiskanen all of a sudden? Like, that's the, I mean, the Finnish team, they've lost a player there. Like, that Heiskanen was going to play 22 minutes or 24 minutes, but I don't know. Is Hakanpää, you can't take him.
He's on the team. He's on the Finnish team, though.
Yeah.
I think they were assuming that he was going to play games.
Well, I'm just saying, if Petrangelo's already pulled the shoot, let's get a Yanni Hakanpää presser going here. Enough, Yanni. Come on.
Yeah.
All right, Leafs Oilers tomorrow. Let's head out there. Here's the GM of the Edmonton Oilers. Here's Stan Bowman. How you doing, Stan?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
We're doing well. We're just, talking about the Four Nations. I'm curious, there is a defense spot available, obviously, for the Canadian team, and there could be other injuries and other opportunities. Are you in a position to pitch your own guys? Like Evan Bouchard, Zach Hyman, are you in a position to do that with Doug Armstrong? What is your role in, how these teams are kind of fulfilling these different roles that maybe they still have to find players for?
Oh, I'm not sure on their process or like how each country's done it to decide. I think they have committees and they have like NHL GMs on there, so I would imagine they're doing. I don't know their process, to be honest with you. So I guess we'll wait and see. Certainly, we're happy to talk about the players on our team and explain how well they've played this season. And then at the end of the day, there's a lot of good players in Canada, so it's a tough team to make, as you can imagine. I'm happy about the performance for our group here, and if they want to know, I'd be happy to promote our guys.
Well, you got a guy that played his first game the other night, and it's John Klingberg. How did that situation come about, and how happy are you that he, landed in Edmonton with you?
Yeah, well, it's great to see him get a chance to play. I know he's worked very hard to get himself back. It's been a long road for John. Looking back, he had the surgery, and he really did a lot of time preparing to get back to this point where he could play games. He worked really hard at it, and been impressed in the short time we've known him here. Very optimistic for what he's going to bring to our team. So he's looked great. He's only been here for a week and a half, and he finally got a chance to play a game. I think when he gets, it's hard jumping into a season 50 games in. Everyone else is playing at top level, and you're just trying to get yourself up to speed. And practicing he's been practicing for a long time. I think you need to get some games under your belt, and I'm very encouraged where he's going to be, and I think we're going to help him get to that next level where he's got so much ability and so much talent. I think it's for him just being able to move to the better than he's moved in the past. He's never felt better with his hips, so that's a great sign, and I'm excited to see how that looks when he's kind of in mid-season form and he gets some more games under his belt.
Stan, whenever there's international competition, there's always owners and GMs that are trepidatious about sending their players there for fear of injury or whatever might harm them. But I wonder, I know McDavid's going and Canada expects it, but how happy, I guess, are you that there's no Team Germany?
Yeah, Leon's been outstanding this year. I think, it's really a pleasure to get to see McDavid and Draisaitl every day, and watching just their level of play. It's really a treat. They're such great players. So yeah, and in Leon's case, I guess selfishly, it's not the worst thing to have him, get a little bit of relaxation there while everyone else is playing. It's not that taxing of a tournament. There's not that many games, so I'm not that worried about our players who are playing there. But Leon's had an amazing season. He's such a talented player, and we're lucky to get to watch him every night.
We're chatting with Stan Bowman, Edmonton Oilers GM, and Leafs are in Edmonton playing the Oilers tomorrow. And the news came out earlier this morning that the NHL is now forecasting pretty significant cap bumps moving forward. I don't recall ever seeing a 3-year projection from the league, but they decided to do that today. The current cap ceiling is $88 million. Next year it'll be $95.5, then $104 million, then $113.5 million. That's what the league is projecting. Obviously, it could fluctuate a little bit. But as one of the 32 guys who have to kind of weaponize that cap space and utilize it to build the best team possible, how do you react, and how does this possibly change the way you operate on a daily basis, knowing what these numbers are looking like and what it projects to be over the next 3 years?
Well, you're right. It's a unique situation. We haven't had this before with the salary cap. There's never been this much certainty going forward. So I think we're all going to adapt to that. It's a little bit of a new world for us, and I guess in simple terms, of course, it offers more flexibility if you're a team that has been right at the cap. Then when the cap goes up, you've got a little bit more flexibility to change your team around or add new players. The flip side to that is I'm sure the agents just want more money for their clients then. So
you figured that out, Stan?
Yeah. So net, I don't know if it's much different. You're just kind of arguing over different numbers, but it's still going to be challenging. As far as when you have a good team with good players, they make a lot of money. And I have no problem with that. Like the great players are the ones that help you win get that competitive advantage over your competition. So it's okay when players make money. It means that they are good players and they've performed well. That's how they get their contracts. So, I think how it will all play out, remains to be seen. But, certainly there are more options. Whereas in the past, maybe there was no cap room. Now there will be some cap room. It then depends on how you want to allocate it and how many players you have at coming up for new deals. And, I think it's hard to make real concrete predictions on how that's going to play, knowing that we have this cap, the number ahead of time, a couple years. I think we'll have to see how that all plays out. But interesting for sure.
What about getting these numbers before the trade deadline? Do you see it affecting your trade deadline or the way the league operates in general?
I don't know if it's going to have a big impact. I guess the only way it would really matter at the deadline is if players you were looking to acquire had multiple years on their deals, and now you know what the cap is moving up to, so you might be more comfortable. But beyond that, I'm not sure that this announcement really impacts this trade deadline.
So, Stan, you this is your first year in Edmonton. You take over a team that's goes to the finals last year. You get there and you get to see them every day, like you mentioned. Is there anybody on your roster, anybody within the organization that surprised you, good or bad, from a scenario where, like, geez, I didn't realize that about that person?
Well, I mean, I guess Connor and Leon, just when you get to see them up close, like, obviously I knew they were amazing players, but when you watch them each day and you see the impact that they make every game, it's really fun to see. I'm so fortunate to have a chance to get to know them, and they're such driven leaders as well. So I can't say enough about the impact they have. I guess the player maybe you learn to appreciate even more would probably be Ekholm. He's been probably our most effective defenseman in every situation. And Darnell's had a really great season for us. I know, watching him from afar, I didn't know him either, but I think our defense probably doesn't get enough recognition for how well we've played as a group. And that was, when I first started, that was all I heard about was their defense isn't strong enough. And, you look at where we're at in the league as far as defending and the metrics on how we play as a team. And it's not all on the defenseman. I think, sometimes team defense can be the way that your five players on the ice work in concert with each other. But I think back to your question, I mean, Ekholm's such a strong player for us. He and Bouchard are really dangerous offensively when they're on the ice with our top line. It really is a true five-man unit. And then he's our number one PK. And, Eki does it all. So, obviously I had a chance to play against him all those years when he was in Nashville and I was in Chicago. And I knew he was a really good player. I think I have an even greater appreciation now for what he brings to the table.
Hey, Stan, your counterpart down the road in Calgary made a big trade yesterday, and he was joking at the press conference that he'd been getting chirped in public about the need to improve the team, and the fans were on him. You're semi-new to a Canadian market. What's your experience been with interacting with the rabid fan base on the other side of the Battle of Alberta?
Yeah, it's true. The fans are so passionate here, which is fantastic. I mean, the knowledge they have of our team and the NHL just at large, you can see it. It's really impressive, and that's fun. That's what you want. Excuse me. At the end of the day, when you have a team that, like ours, that has been a competitive team for a while, then the fans they're very engaged and they're committed to your team, and you can see the passion, and not just the fans that come every night to watch the games, but around town. Like, they know all of our players, they know all their backgrounds, they know what's going on around the league, and you wouldn't want it any other way. I think it's certainly a fun environment to be around, and I love it.
Stan, in terms of the potential for chirping in the streets, like Dave just referenced in Calgary, about making deals, I mean, I'm sure you get that from time to time. Someone's willing to tell you what they think you should acquire come the trade deadline. But I'm curious what you would describe as a successful trade deadline for you and the Oilers.
That's a good question. I think it can look a couple different ways. I mean, we certainly have a good group here, and we wouldn't be in this position if we were really lacking in one particular area. I think it's trying to find maybe some other options for our team so that because when everyone's healthy and we're playing on top of our game, we're a really strong team. We've got good special teams. Our goalies have played well. But then when you look at the other side of it is you're not always healthy and you're not always playing your best. Not everybody's always on top of their game the whole season. There's peaks and valleys. And when that happens, you want to have some other options for your coaches to work with. So I would say it's probably looking at if we didn't have everybody going at the same time, what elements would be able to, what could we bring in that would help us? And that's what our focus is going to be over the next, 5 weeks here, heading into the deadline. So continuing to monitor our team's performance. And, we've played really well since it was a slow start to our season back in October. But once, from early November till now, we've done a lot of good things, and we've shown we can win some different ways, whether it's high-scoring games, low-scoring games, special teams, goaltending. We've had, flashes of all of that. So I think it shows that we have some versatility. But adding some new players, it would be, what elements do we want, whether it's a forward or a defenseman. Those are things that we've had meetings, a couple of weeks ago. We've identified a number of different players that we think could add something to that. And now we want to see which of those players are available, but we also want to see how we perform. And then that'll probably push us in one direction or the other as we get closer to the deadline.
Well, it'll be your first experience with the Leafs in town, and it's going to be something tomorrow. There's going to be a lot of Leaf fans there. I'm sure you're aware of that, Stan. It should be a great game. We're looking forward to it here in Toronto. Enjoy it out there in Edmonton, and thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thanks. It was good to talk to you, and look forward to the game tomorrow.
You got it. Stan Bowman, the GM of the Oilers. That's an experience, man, when the Leafs roll through town for the first time.
I think Edmonton's the only building they don't really take over.
I don't know about that, man. We'll see.
I believe me, I have buddies that are there.
All right.
They get in there pretty good, Noodles.
All right.
Not in Edmonton.
No.
Calgary, Vancouver, Winnipeg, all of that. They don't travel that well in Edmonton.
No?
Believe me. I just ask Strutty. Let's ask Strutty on Monday.
I thought I recalled hearing didn't Wayne Gretzky once say hey, we got to take the crowd out or something like that?
Well,
Who said that recently about Leaf fans showing up? That was in the 80s.
Yeah.
Tickets were $5 back then, and you had Gretzky and Leaf fans were showing up.
Wow, it's a little different now. But yeah, maybe I'm wrong.
We'll see, Noodles. We'll see.
I think you'll hear a lot of Go Leafs goes.
We'll see tomorrow.
I'll be hearing some Go Leafs goes.
All right.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be like Ottawa. What was that, last weekend?
Nothing's like Ottawa. I mean, that was crazy. That was crazy. Leaf fans are always going to take over Ottawa and Buffalo more than anywhere else.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. I'd be curious what you would think is the number 3 rink. Detroit gets a lot. Montreal does, the Western Canadian teams.
Yeah, but Montreal, when was it? They were there a couple of weekends ago. That was, what would be the percentage? 20?
Yeah, probably 80-20.
Yeah,
75-25.
That's what I'm thinking. Maybe in my mind, it's 20% is that's kind of what I'm thinking of. It would be in Edmonton, 10 to 20%. Ottawa was 60. It looked like, the other day.
But it's
the majority.
But it's a motivated 20%. It's a primed.
Yeah, they're loud. They're ready to rock and make sure everyone knows they're there.
Yeah.
All right, Mike Johnson coming up. MJ's done it. He's been in Edmonton playing as a Leaf. We'll ask him how many Leaf fans were there when he used to play there. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, it's time for you to tell us where Al's brother has been hiding all week. Call us right now at 416-870-1050. 416-870-1050. 1050. The first caller through with the correct location wins a pair of tickets to see the Leafs play the Hurricanes February 22nd. All right. And another chance to find Al's brother and win Leaf tickets starts next week right here on Overdrive, brought to you by McAlpine Ford in Aurora. Our family, the Ford family, and you. And, of course, Al's brother has been at George Bell Arena.
Oh, yeah.
That's where he's been hanging out, George Bell.
But some of his clues stunk this week.
He said it was in the junction. I don't think it's technically
not in
the
the junction.
It's near the junction.
Yeah, it's kind of
in the junction.
like you take St. Clair and it's
St. Clair West.
Yeah, absolutely. It's St. Clair West. Take a
He
streetcar
mailed it
down
in
there.
this week. First of all, he didn't show up on Monday to have it. He mailed that in, and then, it was a mail it in one.
That's very valid. Very true. That astonishing that Al's brother couldn't get to the microphone in his living room to give us the clue on Monday.
Oops.
But he didn't. And listen, I'm a team player. I stepped up for my partner. And anyway, I'm with you, though. Like, I read that, and I kind of knew about the junction thing. And I was like, it's not the junction, man. I do not think of George Bell as in the junction.
Yeah.
Maybe it's in the same kind of general area. But
it is a fun barn. Like, it's
awesome
an old school
rink.
barn.
Awesome rink with the surrounding stands. Like, that's, and remember, I believe it had a shared penalty box. Like, I'm pretty sure when I was a kid and I played there. Yeah, shared penalty box, which was dangerous.
Wow.
Dangerous back in the day.
Fight a guy and then continue it on in the box.
Yeah, man. I'm pretty sure it was a shared penalty box. They may have eventually said we got to put a wall up.
Got to put a separator in there?
Yeah, we got to put a separator in there. And there'd just be like an old guy running the clock in there, and you'd be chirping like two 12-year-olds snapping on each other, and the guy would be like, hey, give it, that's enough.
Enough of that language.
Yeah, enough of the language. That's enough. Oh, such a great building. All right, hour 2 coming up. Mike Johnson will join us. Leafs Oilers tomorrow night. We'll get into that and much more. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4.